My name is Laura Bennett. My sister's engagement party was meant to be joyful, but something about that evening felt off from the start. The hall was filled with soft lights, expensive decorations, and relatives pretending everything was perfect. I stood quietly near the window, watching my parents talk to guests. They were smiling, but it wasn't real. I had seen that smile before. It was the one they used when they were hiding something. Then Uncle Mark showed up. He was known for speaking his mind, no matter how uncomfortable it made people. After a few drinks, he walked over to me and said, loud enough for others to hear, "So Laura, I heard you own that $1.5 million house on the hill. Must feel good to be that successful so young." The laughter around us stopped. My mother suddenly went quiet. My father stared at the floor like he had lost his voice. My sister, Rachel, looked shocked. She clearly had no idea what Uncle Mark was talking about. The silence was unbearable. I looked at my parents, expecting them to explain, but they didn't say a single word. That's when I realized something was very wrong. Because the house was mine, and my parents had been lying about it for years. The silence didn't last long, but the damage was already done. My sister Rachel forced a laugh and tried to change the subject, but her eyes kept coming back to me. I could see questions forming in her mind, questions my parents had clearly never answered. Later that night, when most guests were busy dancing, my mother quietly pulled me aside. "Laura, why would your uncle say something like that?" she whispered, panic in her voice. I looked at her, surprised by her audacity. "Because it's true," I said calmly. "And you know it." Her face drained of color. My father joined us, his jaw tight. "This isn't the place for this conversation," he said sharply. "You embarrassed us." I laughed under my breath. "No," I replied. "You embarrassed yourselves by lying." Rachel walked over then, unable to ignore it anymore. "What house?" she asked softly. "What are you all talking about?" My parents froze again. I realized in that moment that they were never planning to tell her. Or anyone. They had taken credit for my success, controlled the story, and hoped I would stay silent forever. But I was done being quiet. I looked straight at my sister and said, "The house Uncle Mark mentioned? It's mine. I bought it with my own money." Her eyes widened. And just like that, the perfect family image my parents had built started to crack. Rachel stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. "You bought it?" she asked slowly. "By yourself." Before I could answer, my father cut in. "She's exaggerating," he said. "It was a family decision." I turned toward him, my hands shaking not from fear, but anger. "That's not true," I said. "You didn't help me. You didn't even believe in me." Rachel looked between us, confused and hurt. "Mom," she asked, "is this true?" My mother opened her mouth, then closed it again. No answer. That was all Rachel needed. "So all these years," she said quietly, "you told everyone you were struggling, while Laura was paying for everything?" My parents didn't respond. I felt something inside me break, not sadness, but relief. The truth was finally out, and I didn't care who was uncomfortable anymore. "I kept quiet because you asked me to," I said, my voice firm. "You said it would protect the family. But all it did was protect your image." Rachel stepped back, clearly overwhelmed. "I need air," she said, walking away from the party. My parents looked at me like I had ruined everything. But for the first time in my life, I felt free. Because the lie was gone. And whatever came next, I was ready for it. Rachel didn't come back to the party. I saw her through the glass doors, standing outside alone, wiping her eyes. Part of me wanted to follow her, but another part of me knew this wasn't about comfort anymore, it was about consequences. Inside the hall, my parents pulled me into a corner. "You had no right," my father hissed. "Tonight was about your sister." I looked straight at him. "And for years, my life was about protecting you," I replied. "Did that ever matter to you?" My mother's voice cracked. "We did what we thought was best." "No," I said calmly. "You did what was best for yourselves." That's when my aunt, Melissa, quietly joined us. She had heard enough. "I always wondered how you afforded everything," she said to my parents. "Now it makes sense." More relatives started watching. Whispers spread across the room. The engagement party had turned into something else entirely. My father realized control was slipping. "Laura," he said, lowering his voice. "If this gets out, it will ruin our reputation." I felt strangely calm. "You already ruined it," I said. "I just stopped lying for you." Across the room, Uncle Mark raised his glass, unaware he had triggered everything. My parents looked small for the first time, not powerful, not respected, just afraid. I walked toward the exit. As I stepped outside, Rachel looked up at me. "I don't know what to feel," she said. "But I know one thing, they lied to both of us." I nodded. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of a much bigger truth. Rachel and I didn't go back inside. We sat on a stone bench outside the hall, the music faint behind us. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The night air felt heavier than the silence inside. "I always thought you were just lucky," Rachel finally said. "I didn't know you were carrying all this alone." I let out a slow breath. "I didn't want you to feel pressured," I said. "And they told me it wasn't the right time. Every year, it was never the right time." She shook her head. "They used you," she said quietly. "And they used your silence." Before I could respond, the doors opened. My parents stepped outside. My mother's eyes were red. My father looked tired, older than I'd ever seen him. "Laura," my mother said softly, "we made mistakes." I waited. "We were scared," she continued. "When you started succeeding, we felt irrelevant. We didn't know how to explain it to people. So you lied," I said, "and let me disappear." My father finally spoke. "We thought you'd understand." That was the moment something inside me hardened. "Understanding doesn't mean sacrificing my identity," I said. "You didn't just hide the house. You erased me." Rachel stood up beside me. "She deserves credit," she said firmly. "Not whispers. Not secrets." My parents exchanged a look. For the first time, they realized they were no longer in control, not of the story, not of us. "I'm not asking for an apology," I said. "I'm asking for honesty. From now on." They nodded, but I didn't know if it was fear or regret. As we walked away together, Rachel squeezed my hand. "No more hiding," she said. And for the first time, I believed it. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages poured in from relatives, some pretending to check on me, others clearly fishing for details. The story had already spread beyond the engagement party. Whispers turned into opinions, and opinions quickly turned into sides. Rachel stayed with me that day. We sat at my place, the very house no one was supposed to know was mine. "I never imagined it looked like this," she said, looking around. "They made it sound like some family asset." I smiled sadly. "That's because they never wanted anyone to see it as my success." That afternoon, my father showed up unannounced. He didn't come alone. Two of my uncles were with him, faces serious, voices low, like this was an intervention. "We need to fix this," my father said. "People are talking." One uncle nodded. "If you explain it the right way," he added, "we can calm things down." I crossed my arms. "And what's the right way?" I asked. My father hesitated. "Say we supported you. Say it was a joint effort." Rachel stood up immediately. "That's another lie," she said. "And we're not doing that." The room went quiet. My father looked at her, shocked. "You're taking her side now?" Rachel didn't flinch. "I'm taking the truth side." That was when I understood something clearly. They weren't sorry for lying. They were sorry they'd been exposed. "I'm not rewriting my life to protect your reputation," I said. "If people can't handle the truth, that's not my problem." My father clenched his jaw. "You're tearing this family apart." I met his eyes. "No," I replied calmly. "I'm just refusing to hold it together with lies." When they left, the house felt quiet but lighter. Rachel looked at me and smiled. "You know," she said, "for the first time, I feel like we're actually sisters." And that mattered more than any approval I'd ever chased. By the end of the week, the family group chat went silent. No greetings. No small talk. Just quiet judgment. Rachel noticed it too. "They're waiting," she said. "Waiting for you to back down." I knew she was right. That weekend, my mother called, not crying, not angry, calm. Too calm. "We're having dinner," she said. "Just immediate family. Let's talk like adults." Against my better judgment, I agreed. The house felt smaller than I remembered. Familiar, but cold. Everyone sat at the table like this was a meeting, not a family dinner. My mother spoke first. "We've been thinking," she said. "Maybe it's best if we keep certain details private." I set my fork down. My father nodded. "People don't need to know who owns what. We can say the house was transferred recently." Quietly. There it was. Another version. Another rewrite. Rachel leaned forward. "So the plan is to pretend nothing happened?" My mother sighed. "You don't understand how society works." I finally spoke. "No," I said calmly. "You don't understand how freedom works." Their faces tightened. "I spent years shrinking myself so you could feel bigger," I continued. "I won't do that anymore. Not for peace. Not for appearances." My father's voice hardened. "If you keep pushing this story, don't expect support from us." The room went still. Rachel stood up beside me. "Then she'll have mine." I looked at her surprised. She smiled softly. "They chose control. We're choosing honesty." That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just about a house anymore. It was about who I was willing to lose and who I was finally ready to keep. The fallout didn't take long. Within days, relatives stopped calling my parents and started calling me. Some wanted the truth. Others wanted gossip. A few wanted favors now that they knew who really owned the house. I ignored most of them. What surprised me was my sister's fiancé, Andrew. He asked to meet me for coffee. Alone. I didn't know, he said the moment we sat down. About the house. About how they treated you. I studied his face, trying to decide if this was curiosity or concern. "I'm not asking for details," he continued quickly. "I just need to know one thing. Does Rachel know the full truth now?" "She does," I said. "And she stood up for it." He nodded, relieved. "That's what matters to me." That conversation changed something. For the first time, I realized this mess wasn't destroying everything, it was clarifying it. That evening, my parents made one last move. They posted a carefully worded message online. No lies. But no ownership either. Just vague phrases about family efforts and shared success. People weren't fooled. Comments flooded in. Questions followed. And silence from my parents grew louder than any accusation. Rachel called me later that night. "They didn't tag you," she said. "Not even once." I laughed softly. "Of course they didn't." "But I did," she added. I commented. "I tagged you. And I wrote that you earned everything yourself." I closed my eyes. "Thank you," I whispered. There was a pause on the line. "You know," Rachel said, "whatever happens next, I'm not going back." Neither was I. Because the truth was out now. And once people see who you really are, there's no going back to the shadows.